But we were speaking earlier to Melissa, a woman who was looking for a property for herself and her family and came across something that was unlivable. And Malcolm has his views on that. Malcolm, what are your thoughts?
Oh, thank you for taking the call. Look, I feel sorry for the lady, obviously, and I don't know why the ABC sort of always takes a easy way out. But the problem you've got is to own your own house, to own your own property. I own mine. I built mine, and I was an apprentice, and I built it while I was an apprentice. And I remember I dug the foundations by hand. I wheelbarrowed all the fill in underneath. I worked on that house, and a lady used to walk past, and she said to us 10 years later, if a person ever deserves a house, that person does. But I just wonder, these people that are complaining all the time about rent being too dear and so forth, yeah, fair enough. But why don't they make a few sacrifices? Have they got dogs? Have they got cats? Do they go on a holiday? Do they go out for dinner? Do they go buy takeaway all the time? Do they have to go over to Bali for a holiday? Why don't they make a few sacrifices? That's what I'm saying. I mean, in other countries, like we're very lucky in Australia. If you want to work, you can get somewhere, you can build your life. But in countries like Morocco, Egypt, Jordan, and all them countries over there, they don't have the opportunity that we've got in Australia. I mean, there's huge opportunities in Australia. I mean, you just got to make a few sacrifices. But whether they're prepared to or not, I don't know. And people will be upset with me saying that. But that's the bottom line. I remember the Premier the Premier just that recently vacated his position. He said, look, all tenants can have dogs and cats inside their units. I mean,
all right, Malcolm, thank you for your call. And you're right, there will be people who agree and disagree with you. Thanks for giving us a call. We've also got someone here, Bill, who's got his views about Melissa's situation. Hi, Bill.
Hey, g'day, Bridie. How are you?
What are your thoughts on the story we've just discussed?
I was particularly concerned because I'm rather familiar with the Residential Tenancies Act. I teach it and I work with it occasionally as a volunteer lawyer. And it worried me. She said something like the rent was $2,500 a month and they wanted a $12,000 bond. Well, that is just totally illegal. And it's not uncommon. We do see this sort of thing coming up. But, there are huge fines for extracting bonds that are inappropriate. And it's just astounding that real estate agents don't sort of see that and draw attention to the landlords and say, well, look, that's just totally against the provisions of the Residential Tenancies Act.
Bill,
and unless you rent more than $900 a week, you must charge the total amount of the monthly rent, no more, for a bond.
Bill, do you think enough potential renters know about their rights and what they should expect?
By and large, no. I don't think enough do. It's always a problem. And, I also feel for landlords because some tenants do take advantage of the situation, but generally, currently at the moment, there's certainly, we saw some really crazy things last year with people abusing their market power, and quite frightening. I had one that was a person was given a notice to vacate by the agent, and she's being taken to VCAT by the agent for a break of lease. I think VCAT will laugh out of court, but nevertheless, this is the sort of thing they try and do to try and oppress people and harass them into giving in, basically, rather than going to VCAT or to, well, usually it's VCAT for residential tenancy issues. So they try and prevent them from contesting things. I had one person who decided not to contest because it's just too stressful.
Thanks, Bill. And look, we are now really going to get the views of someone who's really made it his objective to really call out the issues of properties, particularly safety and livability, and whether there've been illegal subdivisions or the absence of fire alarms, etc. And that's Jordan Vandenberg. He runs rentals.org, a website to provide information and really call out what he says are some of these dodgy venues and places that are being advertised. Welcome, Jordan.
Thanks, Bridie. Thanks for having me.
Can you tell me what are the main themes you're seeing on your website and that you're showing us?
Yeah, I think, so the main things are just an incredibly frustrating power imbalance, first of all. I think Bill, a big fan of the Fitzroy Legal Services work, but often tenants do know their rights, and if they push for their rights to be enforced, they face eviction or an unfair rent increase. That is not uncommon, and I see it all the time. And yeah, everything stems from that. The government's not the one enforcing their own legislation. They kind of push it to the tenants, which is, the equivalent of a cop rocking up if a crime was committed and handing you a copy of the Crimes Act and saying, go for your life. It's on you.
And I note that when you post about a particular property, it might have been brought to your attention by someone who's gone and inspected it. You'll review the price, the photos, location, that sort of thing. What are some of the reactions you're getting?
Yeah, so it's mixed reaction. So, the reaction from landlords is like, oh, that's terrible. Didn't expect that to happen. Not all landlords are like this. And then the reaction from renters is like, oh, of course, yeah, this is pretty bad. But, similar things happen to me. This is not uncommon, which is really, really quite horrifying. And you've got people like the previous caller, I believe his name is Malcolm, was an apprentice, built his house when houses cost 30 cents and a high five. Try find me an apprentice today who can do that. You can't. It doesn't happen. So you've got this massive cognitive dissonance that's occurring, where it's the reality of renters today, but it wasn't the reality of renters 20 years ago. So people don't believe it's happening, but it happens every day.
Well, even just in the last 12 months, we've had all these interest rate rises, and we also feel for people who are rental providers, their mortgages are going up. What's your view on the financial welfare of the property owner?
Oh, it's an investment at the end of the day. Investments come with risks. I think it's completely unfair that landlords can just pass on the risks of their investment to a tenant. Pay for your own investment. Why should a tenant cop your increase in expenses? Pay for it yourself. Get a job.
And one of the things I noticed you'd commented on is that for the short time, around 18 months ago when your process started, some of these pretty unlivable looking properties would stay on the market for a long time. Now you're seeing them disappear. Are they disappearing because someone's snaffling them up, or is the rental provider removing them from a website?
Unfortunately, they're most commonly disappearing because people are desperate and they're being rented. So that's what the domain listings are saying. That's what the realestate.com listings are saying, and the new, Facebook Marketplace and Gumtree listings are saying. They're just being snapped up, which is really, really sad.
So what can tenants do?
I think, at the moment, you just got to tell your story. You got to, show people like Malcolm that, hey, this is a reality. This is what's happening. But you got to do it safely, which is exactly why I created shitrentals.org, because you can tell your story anonymously, put your photos, put your proof there, and share the story. Show politicians, show the people in power that, hey, this is happening and we need to fix it because, this is dangerous.
On the politicians, are we seeing a response from members of parliament when homes or apartments in their electorates are being revealed to be unlivable?
Initially no. So often what I'll do is I'll, reach out to the politician and be like, hey, do you want to comment on this particular horrible house in your electorate? And I won't receive a response. And then I'll post the video and then tag that politician, and then they'll respond on Facebook, or their staff will respond on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or Twitter or whatever it is. So it's very reactionary. And I think it's because they know they could be in trouble if they're not seen to be doing something, but they're not being proactive whatsoever.
And we're speaking with Jordan Vandenberg, who runs rentals.org and highlights properties that are either unsafe, unlivable or ridiculously priced. Do you think the rental market needs regulating?
100%. It is, particularly in Victoria, we are, one of the most regulated rental markets in Australia compared to, the only one probably more regulated is Canberra. But the legislation itself is not enforced. So they're just words on a piece of paper, which is about as useful as monopoly money at a, Hungry Jack's.
Jordan, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Brady.
That's Jordan Vandenberg there, calling out properties where people have sent him through videos, information, and particularly he's interested in price, location, description, when false representations are made, perhaps when they're not safe or not livable. Plenty of responses from you on the text line. One here saying, Malcolm fails to realise, this was a caller we had earlier, that housing is the second most expensive in the world. That's from Dean in Geelong. Steve has said, thank you for the dumb pep talk. I had my first 2-week holiday for 20 years last year and I've been trying to buy a house. So, yeah, plenty of people realising that things have changed a lot and not everyone is able to build their own house. Another call here saying, saying, thank you for having Jordan on. Renters need to know their rights because the house is rigged against us. And Dean from Geelong, again, politicians from both sides of Parliament are responsible for this housing mess and they should hang their heads in shame. Well, Bridie O'Donnell with you here on ABC Radio Drive across Melbourne and Victoria. Coming up, are the speed cameras working across Victoria or is